The paranormal is an enigma. Since the dawn of our species, things that seem outside the realm of understanding have been dubbed supernatural. Over time, science have helped us measure, predict, and quantify this reality, yet there are still unsolved mysteries and unexplained phenomena that plague our attempts to rationalize this world. Ghost sightings, near-death experiences, and the psychic phenomenon, just to name a few, are among the subjects science dismisses as flaws in perception, hallucinations, and outright delusions. During this program, we attempt to bridge the gap between diverse viewpoints and air out the opinions of experienced individuals in the fields of investigation, metaphysics, and skepticism. Welcome to the Supernatural Symposium. Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Symposium. I am your host, Justin Brown, and I am presenting episode 2. We're on our second one, ladies and gentlemen, and I am very excited for this one. We're moving forward in our discussion, our serious discussion on paranormal topics in the here and now. I mean, let's get into this, guys. We're going to talk about EVP. It seems like that's the most popular way to try to gather some type of physical or supporting evidence of life after death, of spirits, entities, ghosts, what have you. We're going to talk about EVP. We're going to get into all the different subsets. We're going to talk about, is it legitimate? Can you validate that it is anomalous? And can you validate if it's a spirit voice? Or can we speculate what the heck could it be if not spirits? So, what we're going to do real quick is we're going to pretty much let you guys know who we're talking to tonight. But if you are in the chat and you've got questions, this is how this works. Periodically through the show, if you got a question, just, be patient, write it down, try to be as legible and coherent as possible. We have chat moderators both on YouTube and Facebook standing by, jotting down your questions, and we will get to them. But, we'll get to them here in the moment. We're going to introduce Heather Elliott first. Heather Elliott is a paranormal investigator. Heather, real quick, let us know a quick bio and where you're from and what you do in the paranormal field.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Heather Elliott, and I am with the Ghost Guild located in Raleigh, North Carolina. I have been paranormal investigating since about 2015. I started with another team and then kind of took a little break and then joined the Ghost Guild. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm originally from West Palm Beach, Florida. So I moved here back in the late 90s and I love it. I can't remember. Did you ask me what got me into the paranormal? I'm sorry.
We'll get into that.
Get into that. Okay, sorry.
Just pretty much tell them what you do, maybe what kind of role you play in the group.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a paranormal investigator with the Ghost Guild, and so my role, like pretty much the rest of us in the group, where we investigate locations. Our niche is more historic locations. When we go in, anything we find, we really try to tie it back to the history of the location. And so we go in with, being skeptical, as anyone should. And then, we try to debunk anything that we can't, we see if we can rule as paranormal. So.
That's awesome. So you're trying to correlate history with the phenomena that they're reporting.
Yes.
And if you can't, then you're going to try to search for possible explanations.
Yes.
And anything else that's there. So that's awesome. I'm glad speaking with you tonight. I'm glad you can join us. Let's go over to Professor Jim Clauson. What's going on, buddy? How are you doing tonight?
I had to get back to the right screen to unmute my mic.
That's okay. We're all producers tonight.
Yep.
So, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
Who am I? I'm Jim Clauson. I live near Knoxville, Tennessee. and have for maybe 40 years. I don't know. Looking at the panel, I think I've got genes that are older than everybody here, but we won't get into ages or weights or whatever else we're not supposed to talk about. My role for probably the last maybe 15 years is, I hate to say I'm a spoiler, but I've found a few teams that will allow me to join them. And they kind of let me go off in the corner and do my own thing. So we were talking about Brushy before the show started. I can get into places like Brushy that I couldn't get into myself, because the majority of them are covering most of the cost, and I just have to pay my own cost.
Right.
So I'm not an investigator. I'm not I'm old, so I sometimes forget my words. There's a term for it, and it's not coming to me.
Well, you have paranormal enthusiasts, you have, people who claim that they're investigators, researchers. I don't know what you're grasping for there.
It's something below enthusiasts.
Thrill seeker?
Pretty much. There was another word I was looking for, but there are people that since we're talking about EVP, the easiest way to get into paranormal is a $30 microphone or $30 handheld recorder. So the cheapest thing is a flashlight. I get a flashlight and I got a recorder, and all of a sudden I'm a researcher, and I go out and stand in a graveyard all night long and expect something to happen. I call those people, what they do is, I call a random ghosty walkabout. They go into building. Again, we were talking about brushing. You just wander around Brushy for 5 or 6 hours and then see if you've got anything when you get home. I'd rather go in with a plan, with specific experiments I'd like to run, and that's a good launch point.
So you're an open-minded skeptic of paranormal claims.
I think that's a valid description. Yes, sir.
All right, that's awesome. I am glad to have you on the show. I know we have exchanged some dialogue here and there over the last couple of years, and it's been good. So I'm expecting good things tonight.
Cool.
All right, Holly, you're next.
Hey!
Hi.
I am Holly Mullins. I'm an intuitive healer, of course, the psychic. Before I really indulged in my psychic life, I was a paranormal investigator. I still am to a different degree now, but I've been into the paranormal and metaphysical field for over 10 years now. And I guess I got laid on this path because of my personal experiences. And EVPs are very fascinating. But you know what? Believe it or not, being psychic doesn't always mean that Jesus is in toast. So I'm a healthy skeptic of the paranormal. And, being psychic, not many people are.
Right. So, having you on the show is important because if we're going to be open-minded, we need to gather a panel of everybody who has experiences, has different, viewpoints and outlooks on what we call the paranormal. So tonight we're going to be really, pounding the topic of EVP. Is it, legitimate? Is it something? But it's nice to have you on the panel and hear it from a psychic's point of view when it comes to the subject matter. So thank you very much for coming on the show again.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm good. I'm glad. That's good. All right, guys. So EVP, all right, electronic voice phenomena for people who may not know. Okay. But it's been a very long time that people have claimed to hear anomalous voices electronically created, from what we can tell, on devices. And the definition is these voices appear and can be heard on the devices that we record with, but we're not hearing them during the recording. Okay? We're going to talk about why we don't hear them, possibilities and explanations of why we can't hear them, and why they may come across the devices. We're going to speculate, we're going to theorize, create hypotheses and see how we test them in the paranormal field. So it's going to be very exciting. I think we're going to start off with trying to understand what each person does in the EVP research, what their idea and theories are, and we'll start from there. So Heather, let's go ahead and start with what your team does in, their standard EVP research. When you go to locations, what do you do when you do your EVP research? Like the equipment you use, how you, your methodologies, and what you do to analyze and then determine whether it's anomalous or not.
Yeah, absolutely. There's several things that we do. And, one of the first things I think really is trying to do as much environmental control as possible. So, obviously a lot of the times that we're doing investigations are going to be at night for, different reasons. And, one being that, things tend to be a lot more quiet. You may hear less people outside, less cars driving by, less, the animals are quiet. So, things like that, put our phones on airplane mode. Depending on the location, most of the time we divide into very small teams to really try and limit noise contamination. We'll even take our audio recorders if we're investigating with people, because we do invite the public on some of our hunts. Not all of them are private. And we'll usually have everyone tag their voices on the audio recorder so that later when we review, we kind of have an idea of what everybody sounds like. So yeah, we use various different audio recorders. My favorite personally, and a few of us on our team have these, we have different models of the Tascam audio recorder. They're really nice. They record, the ones we have record in stereo. So you've got those dual mics. And then we, something I do, I'll just speak, for me, try to do things like with the settings on your recorder, record in wave format so it's uncompressed, turn low cut filtering off, because I want to catch everything. I don't want anything, and even ambient noise or anything cut out, because that's where I may catch something. And so you want to pay attention essentially to the settings on your audio recorder. For me, I often do investigations with more than one audio recorder, so I'll keep two. So if I'm in a room, doing an EVP session, I'll have two audio recorders with me because I'm interested in knowing, did I catch this on both or did I only catch this on one? And I don't know if you want me to go too much into that now, the reasoning behind that now, but there's reasons, that when you're analyzing reasons why you may catch something on one and not both, but
we will.
And yeah, okay, yeah, I won't go into that now, but and then we also have one of our lead investigators, and I hope I don't butcher this name because I have used this device. He let me use this one time, but I think it's called the Rotiday. Is that right? And basically he'll use that sometimes, plug that into one of his audio recorders, and it basically is supposed to cut out a lot of that, noise and such, so you're only hearing, I guess, audio or, sound. So anyway, that's probably just a high-level overview of what we do.
All right, that's awesome. So pretty much what you do in your EVP research is you're trying to catch voices by definition that are not heard in real time on the recording device. And why are you doing that? Are you trying to see if the entities there can communicate that way, or if there is claims when you go there? Like, do you do that at every location, or is that only things you do sometimes?
We do it at all of them. And I'm one of those investigators that has their audio running the whole time. I don't personally do the EVP burst sessions where I'm just going to do a quick, 2 minute or however long. I've got it running the whole time. Because you never know, you may catch something just in casual conversation you're having with somebody. We have them running all the time. And it's interesting that things that we've caught on the audio recorders, we've caught on video cameras as well. So, which is kind of interesting. So, it's not really just your audio recorders, but But yeah, we do that, and unfortunately there are those locations where there's a lot of noise contamination. And so it's like, oh, do we turn the recorders on, but I do it anyway. I want everything, because it's not just good just for the EVPs or disembodied voices, it's good for knowing what's going on, because we tag things constantly, like, oh, somebody laughing, distant noises, car driving by. My knees are bad, so you constantly hear my knees popping all the time, so I'm constantly tagging, oh, Heather's knees, or Heather walking. So yeah, it's really bad. So yeah, just tag. And then just having those timelines, like, oh, this is Heather, I'm at this location, it's 10:34 p.m. It's nice to just kind of have a play-by-play too. So
right on. Sounds great. We will definitely get into more of the nuts and bolts of what you do and why you do it. We're going to go to Jim. Jim, I understand you do EVP research as well. Do you want to talk about your methodologies, why you do it, and what you want to try to pretty much determine with that type of research?
I also carry 2 recorders, but one I call a journaling recorder. It's just a little, I think, $50, $60 Sony, and it runs all the time. And it's like Heather was saying, it's more for journaling and telling me what's going on. My primary setup is a setup like you use. It started with David Roundtree in some really, really expensive equipment. Paul Browning converted down to stuff that's affordable. It's called the RVPR. And if I had a better memory, I could probably tell you what those stand for. The R is Roundtree. I remember that much.
Roundtree Voice Phenomena Recorder.
That's what I was getting ready to say. It's I use a Tascam. I think Justin uses a Zoom. Uses 2 dynamic mics. We compare the dynamic mics against each other, as well as the dynamic mics against the condenser mics that are internal to the recorder. The purpose for that specific activity is one of David's theories, is that EVP is caused by EMF, not by acoustics. So the dynamic mics will not pick up EMF, the acoustic or the condensers will. So you can put them on a graph. And if you see a spike in one and it's not in the other, something's different. And that's something that's worth investigating.
Yeah, like when I first heard about the RVPR, I was like, this is what I've been looking for to do some cross-checking, because I was trying to find out how we're going to determine if it's anomalous or not. I started video recording everything so I can kind of see what the sound might be originating from. It's definitely more data, but when you're talking about electronic voice phenomena, you're not talking about acoustic energy in theory. The theory is that it's some type of electronical phenomena. So when you start getting nerdy and technical, you're like, oh, is it electromagnetic induction? Is it capacitance? What is it? So you can do the experiments and the, researching the actual hypothesis, which you told us about. I definitely love that. We'll get back to you what you have found, if anything, with that setup, because I am very, very curious about that. Let's go to Holly. Holly, EVP.
Justin.
You've done EVP research, I'm pretty sure. Why do you do it from a psychic standpoint? Do you do it to validate things that you sense or other sensitives and psychics sense? And if so, how accurate, or what are the results from those validations? And go.
Sure. Okay. So lately, I'm going to be purely honest with you. We're working with a paranormal team and doing spiritualist experiments. But however, from the paranormal investigator point of view and the psychic point of view, I actually have a theory. And it really makes sense with me. I don't know how other people feel about it out there. I've never really kind of discussed or threw it out there, but from the paranormal aspects of it, it's the same old same. EVPs, you have to be You have to watch your backgrounds. You have to make sure, you're counting into people who's breathing, coughing, stomach's growling, farting. There's just so many aspects to it. But from the psychic point of view, why do I do it? It's my most favorite piece of equipment ever. Even if I was to say, you know what, I'm a full-time paranormal investigator, and I probably have just a recorder in my hand of myself, because to me, I find validation in hearing that. When you have the ear for it and you know what you're listening for, then there it is. There's validation in that. I feel like that's the same type of validation people yearn for when they're looking for it psychically. So you can, validate, back up what you're feeling, what you're seeing, what you're hearing. If you're hearing voices with your ears, and nobody else is hearing it, and you catch that voice on the recorder, then there you go. To me, it's not validation for myself anymore, because I've talked about this with Justin before. I don't need validation for myself. I know who I am as a person. Now, is it pretty kick-ass if I do get like this EVP backing up what I'm feeling or saying or hearing? Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. That's got to be really, really interesting research to hear something or get some type of, information or voice or something, and then have it come across a digital recorder. I mean, that's got to be one of the most, craziest things. Like, if, when I get those things, they're rare, but when I do, it never gets old. It's always amazing, and I'm always astonished by it. So that's really, really cool that you're doing that. And I try, very hard to do that. The same kind of research when we go out with the sensitives in our group. Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's something for people to see, because there's so much more to it from the spiritual aspect. We can get into that later, but I definitely have something to say from a spiritual point of view. I see the scientific side of it. That's what makes me level-headed. But coming from the spiritual side, I probably have a lot to share with you guys, and I'm excited about it. And I don't even know if I want to talk about it, but I'm gonna, because I love you.
Why would you not want to talk about something with me? That's curious. I'm curious about that. All right.
No.
Okay, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to chat. Right now, the chat moderator on YouTube has a family emergency. She'll get back to us when she can, so I'm going to be trying to moderate the chat.
Justin, I am back until the phone rings again, and I apologize for everybody, so I have to go back in there and read up on everything.
Okay, I got the 2 questions already on YouTube that I see.
Okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and, Jess, go ahead and shout out everybody on YouTube real quick.
Okay, I had some written down from earlier, but I had to get out and come back in. Val, Sam, Scotty, Slow Plow, and it's loading. And I think John Cool's on as well.
Nice. Thanks for joining us. Now, a couple of the questions we'll get to after we shout out the ones on Facebook. So, Missy, go ahead and shout out everybody that's on Facebook if you can.
Okay. I have Helen Townsend. I have Kim Doherty. I have Bill Davis. Heather's watching. Nelson Nouse. Holly's watching. Bob Doherty. Anna Claire Howard. Luella Campbell, Becky Compton, Marissa Richards, Wanda Romero's, Natalie, I can't say her last name. I'm not even going to go there. Amy Simpson, William Draper. I have like 32. Do you want me to read them all?
If you want Missy to shout you out, just type "shout me out," okay? I just wanted to see you struggle to do that. I'm sorry, I'm an a-hole.
You're a butthead.
Any questions from Facebook for these guys?
I have one, maybe 2. What the one Derek Schreiner asked? He said, "What is the best EVP you've gotten, and what method did you use to validate it?"
Heather, go ahead and answer that first.
Yeah, sure. So that's a tough one, but I would have to say my personal favorite is one that we got earlier this year. at the Burgwin Wright House. It's a colonial era house. It's down in Wilmington, North Carolina. And just real quick, interesting, it was going through renovations at the time. So we were like, yeah, hopefully it'll, spark more activity. But so there were a few of us that were in one of the bedrooms, and there were reports that a door there, I guess, likes to, I believe it was closed. So we were kind of, investigating that. And so one of our investigators asked, or, he opened the door and he basically said, now, if you don't want that open, you can close it if you want. It's your house after all. And there's a very proper sounding female voice that says, I don't like that. And really clear, really blew me away when I listened to it. But of course, I have to put my debunking hat on. Okay, let's try to figure out what this was. And, we did several things. So first, did we have any devices in the room with us that talk? Were they distant voices? As we're listening to audio, let's compare that to the other distant voices that we're hearing to kind of see if it's in that ballpark. Did we catch it on multiple devices? So, and we did. We caught it on the audio recorders we had in the room, at least one of the video cameras. And then I actually had my second audio recorder right outside the room. And what's interesting is when you listen to it on that recorder, it was caught on there, but it's more distant. So really leads us, more to believe that it was a disembodied voice rather than maybe something that was manipulating a recorder. And that's not, I'm not 100%, sure on that, but we didn't hear it though. Nobody heard it at the time. But I tried to do analysis on it, just looking at spectrograms, and I'm in no way, shape, or form the expert on that. That's something I've started doing recently. And, I compared that to others in the room at other points in time when we were talking to see, is it in the same range, the same frequency? Is there anything different about it? And just for this that may not know, spectrogram is going to show you kind of a diagram of that voice, and it's going to show you just the frequency, how many hertz it is, just the highs and lows of it. And there's one software I use that will actually show you lines where the voices go up and down, which is kind of interesting to look at. And when I look at that voice, on that diagram, it's within the same range as the rest of us speaking. Again, I'm not the expert, so I don't know, exactly, I guess, what I'm looking for. It just kind of looks the same. So, we do all kinds of things to try to, was this really a voice or what, can we debunk it? But we were not able to debunk it. So that's my favorite one.
Nice. Yeah, we have theories of what we think EVP are, but we just really don't know. So we just are data loggers. We just write it down, put a check mark next to it, and keep on going, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting about that one too is it was almost a direct response. So, Nelson, he says, he opened the door. If you don't like that, you can close it. And she says, I don't like that. Now she could have been sent, talking about his hair or I don't like your shoes, sorry, Nelson. But, more direct would have been, I don't like that door open. That would have been, super direct, but still, it was, I think pretty compelling. Right. And just the accent as well. It was kind of a proper English. I don't like that.
Right. Yeah, definitely interesting. Jim, I believe the question was your favorite, most profound EVP captured.
With the caveat that I didn't actually physically capture it myself, but it was captured in the room with other people, and we all went over it and went nuts. I don't follow the usual, do you know you're dead? When did you die? Does it hurt? All that kind of crap. This was at Old South Pittsburgh Hospital about 10 years ago. And we were in one of the ERs, and it was around Thanksgiving. And we were talking about it was a group that represented 4 or 5 or 6 states from Michigan to Florida, actually. And we were talking about stuffing recipes with the intention of drawing these people, if there are people out there, into our conversations. And we were basically, it was, wet versus dry, in versus out, sausage versus whatever. And there were a number of phrases that were picked up that were enough relevant to the conversation that it honestly blew me away, because according to that little note up there, I'm a skeptic, right? But it was pretty cool.
Right. There's always a debate that I find that's interesting. People define paranormal slightly different. Some people, skeptics, science, enthusiasts and scientists like to say, paranormal is just something not explainable with, our known science. So a lot of times it gets kind of, pigeonholed into meaning that paranormal, it's from a ghost. But
right.
That might be a mistake sometimes. And I think that skeptics, they can get a little bit biased themselves, so that every time they hear paranormal, like as an explanation, they kind of freak out because they immediately think, oh, they must mean a ghost did it, or they must mean that, and they're just insinuating so much stuff without much evidence to back that up. But what we're really saying is, we don't know what the heck did that. So you speculate, then you start asking more questions. So what is that? So I would like to hear from you, Jim. After hearing stuff like that, what do you think that is?
My working theory is one of two things. It's either just random EMF fields and or audio artifacts that are a function of the recorder, the room, the people talking, shuffling their feet, that kind of thing. So that it's not, I say that because when I switched to the RVPR setup, I will say I don't get clear EVP anymore. And I think that's because it's such a good piece of equipment that it's not picking up all of those external influences. And back to methodology and what we're really doing, I think I spend more time listening to my RVPR setup and looking for things that I think might cause a cheaper piece of equipment to pick something up that could sound like, and that's back to the confirmation bias that you and I have talked about before. If I'm expecting something that's talking about Christmas, anything from jingle bells to whatever is going to sound like Christmas related.
Right.
And what I'm trying to do with the setup now is, like you say, eliminate what those other things possibly are. You can't measure infrasound. Unless you're a whole lot richer than I think you are, we can't afford the equipment that will produce or capture infrasound, which is 20 hertz or below our hearing. Okay. But there's a way using a sound level meter to differentiate between the two. And you can say, is there or is there not infrasound available at this location? And I may be jumping ahead.
Right. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. I want to get into all that stuff. So pretty much what you're explaining is sometimes if the recording devices that they're recording with, the playback, the detail, and the quality is not so great, and the pareidolia part of our minds are taking our confirmation biases and saying, hey, this is what we're hearing, from ambient noise and contamination, like you said. So that's interesting. We're going to go to Holly real quick and have Holly answer that question, and then we're going to go to more questions before we start to go down further into the rabbit hole of EVP. So, Holly, best EVP ever captured.
All right. I actually can play it for if you guys want to listen.
No, we don't want to hear it. I'm just joking. Go ahead.
Screw you. You're going to hear it anyway.
Let's hear it.
Okay, I'll play it for you, and then I'll tell you guys what the background of this EVP is. This is one of my favorite EVPs captured. So that's it. And something I want to say too is, as a paranormal investigator on the investigation side of me and who I am, is we all yearn for that Class A. But what makes it a Class A? And how many times have you heard two spirits interact with each other? This was captured in a old colonial hotel, which has never been investigated but by our team. And it was captured in the basement, which now is the pub and tavern of this renovated place. We had a Sony, and it was down there by itself, the 2 floors down, and we were 3 floors up, and it was there all night. I love just setting a recorder down and leaving it, just walking away from it. Obviously it's a little girl and a man interacting with each other. It sounds like she's playing ghosts, which is funny because I don't bring kids on investigations or, any kind of locations like that where we're doing paranormal investigations, unless it's a public, but that wasn't it. But anyway, that's my favorite, other than one that we captured a little boy come through. It was a private residential case where a little girl was, she was being woke up in the middle of the night by a little boy wanting to play. Of course, it was dead that night. There was no, bumps, bangs, things like that. And what I've discovered is that some of the quietest cases give you the best evidence. It could be one great A EVP. And, it's clear. I didn't even have to clean that up. So, yeah, that's it.
So I have to ask, as a metaphysicist, did you pick up anything before, during, and after this capture?
No, we wouldn't. Nobody was around. No, I mean, not this one that I just played. No one was around this. There's a little girl there at the Inn at Wise. Everybody sees her, interacts with her. She's always causing chaos at the Inn at Wise daily. There's no time where she's more active than not. So it's pretty cool to have that validation, because people, when we went in to investigate before renovation, we actually asked around, and there was a electrician who had said, I have seen a little girl in here. So it was really cool to get that. But I can play it one more time for you guys, just in case. I know some of you in chat didn't hear it.
Wow.
But you can clearly hear.
Yeah, there's definitely something there.
A little girl. Yeah, she's playing. It sounds like she's playing ghosts to me. It's funny because you got a spirit, pretending to be a spirit, and the male, he is more of you can hear him say "stop it" right now, which is pretty cool. But other than that, I'm really harsh on EVPs when I'm listening to them. I actually debunk more than I've ever really pulled out to say, I think, I definitely for sure this is something. After years of listening to this, yeah, I have no doubt.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that you do that. We're going to move along with these questions real quick, guys. Now, when the panel answer these, try to do it as short as possible. We're going to go, I've seen this question on YouTube and Facebook. Which is better, digital or analog recording devices? Heather, go ahead and give us your answer to that.
Yeah, sure. My experiences have pretty much just been with digital audio, obviously video, and I'm certainly not the expert on, and from what I've researched, I know there is, when the sound, goes to the device, there is a conversion, I guess, that goes from analog to digital, and then I guess vice versa when you play it back. But that's pretty much been my experience, thus far is been digital.
All right, maybe you should try some analog then.
I'm interested. Yeah.
I've heard theories.
Definitely.
They think, if it is some EMF creating or has something to do with the EVP, the magnetic tape is definitely going to pick up something. So you can just take a tape and throw it in the corner of the room, and you might get something, and that would be pretty solid, right?
It would. And, I've also heard too, if you're going to do that too, always use a brand new tape, as opposed to a tape that you've erased with that recording device. And then, you're going to record on top of it, I guess, because some of the, I don't know what you would call it, residue. I mean, I know there's like a, something on that tape. There could still be some residual on there. So I know they always recommend, using brand new tapes when doing that. But yeah, it would be definitely interesting to try.
Right. Yeah. You can't completely record or erase over each recording that you do. So that's a drawback. So I think that would be one of the drawbacks from using analog. But like you were saying, we'll go ahead and let Jim. He may know a little bit more. I don't want to steal the stage here. So Jim, what do you think better is, analog or digital recording?
I've used both. I've got a reel-to-reel recorder up here that I've even tried. My problem with analog is they have motors in them.
That make noise.
The motor, they make their own noise. If you're old enough to remember, not that old, but the early night shots recorded to DVDs, and every once in a while it would spin up, and you could hear that moan. Nobody ever tells you about that. I'm kind of a snob on audio equipment. I'd rather have as good as I can afford. The DR40, I don't know, the price has been coming down. I think it's about $150 now.
Yep.
My wife may be watching this, so I don't want to tell you how much I paid for it. I would rather have the best digital I can find, because I think it's going to give me the cleanest output. I've sat reel to reel beside the DR40. I've set handhelds against it, and I don't think there's any comparison. There is a validity to what you're saying about having a magnetic media, that it's like spiritography, where images get impressed on exposed film.
Yeah, right.
And there's some stuff like that I can't explain. I probably never will. I could spend the rest of my life just studying that little piece of the paranormal field. But get the best you can get, and I'd say stick with digital.
Right. Yeah. Let's see what Holly thinks. Holly, have you ever used analog and digital? What do you think about this?
I've been around both. I guess, I don't know. I always want to go to digital. But also, I don't know. I mean, have you guys heard of the spiritual trumpet? That's what I'm bringing to the table. So yeah, I mean, I guess digital would have to be mine. But again, I have this whole theory. Man, you guys might have a better understanding of why I feel the way that I do about EVPs.
Right on. Thank you. I will add, there are all kinds of pros and cons to both. Probably more cons to analog, just because the technology's not being progressed that I know of in the consumer market. Analog is more of a accurate representation of what you're recording. It's not some type of sampled audio, because what digital audio is, you're sampling, the audio and trying to, recreate it digitally. but the analog is an actual representation of it. But like, Jim, alluded to that there's internal noises. It's got a lower or a higher floor of hiss and noise to it. You can get some ghosting where you're hearing some previous recordings. Dealing with the tapes can be annoying, and getting it into a software program to analyze it the way we want to now is not feasible. Now, if the digital, you can record hundreds and hundreds of hours of it. If you get a high end, like, everybody's suggesting, something that's at least 16-bit, at least 41,000 hertz sampling rate, you're just going to get the quality that you're looking for, and it's just going to be easier to load onto your computer and listen to and do whatever you need to do. So those are probably the best things that we could say about it that I can add. Real quick, before we move on, I want to address, I think Val asked this, and if it wasn't her, I'm sorry, but there was a question, can having too much equipment or a certain type of equipment interfere with capturing good EVP? So I thought that was a good question. Heather, do you want to answer that?
Yes, and this is something I have found out just through investigating. One of the reasons I put my cell phone on airplane mode is if I'm live listening. So live listening being I've got headphones hooked into my audio recorder, so I can try to hear an EVP and whatnot live, so I can respond and whatnot. I find that if my cell phone is not on airplane mode, I hear this popping and hissing in my audio, and it's just I don't want that, obviously. So there's just you have to really be mindful of all the equipment, and not just with audio, but walkie-talkies can cause REM pods to go off, so you really have to be aware of what you have going on around you. So I personally think, yes, you could have too much equipment, and if it's equipment that you really need for that situation, just be really mindful of what you're using and how it can interact with each other.
Know your gear, right, Heather?
Yes, know your gear, definitely.
All right, Jim, same question.
I think if it's got batteries or it plugs in, it's going to generate an EMF field and should be kept as far away from your recording device as possible. And I'm not saying that because I know what the effect is. I'm saying that because I don't know what the effect is. But if I've got a big camera and another device and another device and another device, and I'm holding a recorder right here, what am I picking up? Like Heather said, I tell people to turn their phones off completely because I don't know. When the phones are on, it's constantly polling, checking for messages, checking for whatever, depending on what kind of smartphone you've got. So clearly you can't have it on normal mode. I say turn it off just to be on the safe side. Again, because I don't know.
Right. It's the more equipment you have, more variables you have, the harder it is to control. Is what you're alluding to there, right?
And that's something Heather talked about right before we came on the air, is you should be trying to simplify the environment, not complicating it. That it makes our job as analysts, I'll get the right word, to have as clean a field as possible and to document what's not clean if we can.
But all the blinky lights are cool, Jim.
Well, I'm way beyond wanting a TV show. I've been investigating for 25 years. I've never put up a YouTube video. So blinky lights don't impress me. They impress me if I'm 60 feet across a room and want to know something's happening. Blinky lights are handy if they mean something, like not including a K2R.
Right. Totally understand. Holly, too many gadgets bad? Is too many gadgets bad?
Well, We work with a paranormal team, and it's hard because as psychics, we drop in. We do the whole, this is what we're feeling, this is what we're getting. We'll do, look at location maps before we go into the locations. When they whip out the equipment, I'm just like, I'm done. I'm done. The ghost box, I've worked around it for years. I can't stand it. I can't do it. It's too much. There's way too much contamination in these equipments. They should really kind of, I guess, make sure they are working in a contained area when they're working with these things. Yeah. So, but I'm not a big scientific person. So, hey.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of, it's, goes against what you're trying to, what your, lane is. But like we talked about before, getting some cross-checking and validation on other things like devices that, are solid, like an image on a video camera or a piece of audio on a recorder, that's useful.
Right. Yeah. Well, because people like to see it. I mean, I get it. If you're not in any else, you think that you're not psychic or can pick up on certain things, then we yearn for that validation. This is something that we yearn for. This is knowledge. This is beyond what we can see, right? So we want to know. We're curious. We need that validation. Everybody needs validation. But how far are you willing to go for contamination as a paranormal investigator, and put evidence out there that's, contaminated like it is? And that's why a lot of people are so like, oh, you got an EVP? Nobody gives a shit. I mean, now it's gotten to that point. Nobody really gives a shit.
Well, yeah, we can talk about just for a second. There is a lot of paranormal groups out there, presenting all types of things that they're calling EVP. And it's just, when you take away from the awe and the rarity and all of that from something, then it kind of takes away the interest and the sensationalism of, all the stuff that we're being wowed about. So that is something that we need to consider, and we need to take a closer look at, and we will do that in this live stream. But what I want to get to right now before we go back to some questions is I want to talk about some issues in the EVP research field. Heather, I want to ask this question, and I want each panel member to answer. What do you see in the paranormal community and the EVP research field community? What do you think is the biggest problem? What's not allowing the field to progress in EVP? And what would you tell people out there? What would you suggest to them to not do? And, trying to make the research better. What's the biggest thing that you're seeing?
Yeah, a lot of the things that I see, and I was guilty of this, of course, too, when I first started investigating. But one of the things is, you go on an investigation, you catch, a voice or something. It's just automatically, oh, it's an EVP, without any analysis, without any, hey, let's try to debunk this. What could this have been? Is there a plausible explanation for this? And I see a lot of that, or they say, and I hope I'm not hurting anybody's feelings, but, or they'll say, oh, well, I did, I did some, I made sure it wasn't any of us in the room or anything. And all of that's great. To really further it though, I think you really, it's so hard to say. It's like, not just trying to debunk it or find a logical explanation for it, but I think I've read things online about studies that have been done where they'll put recorders in some sort of room where there are no no frequencies, nothing coming in, no radio waves, no nothing, and they're still able to catch voices somehow. And it's like, have been unable to find where that research was furthered. I think we, just really need to, I don't know what it is, but just really try to find out where these voices are coming from. I mean, there's theories. Maybe they're not the voices of the deceased. Maybe we are on some frequency and they're maybe living people on a different frequency, and something happens and we're now on the same frequency. Well, let's research that. Like, how can we test that? How can we, do that? And then I think as far as what not to do, there's probably a lot I could say about that, but I would say one of the big things, make sure you're not doing too much editing to your files. When you do find a voice, I mean, there's things you can do. Let me try to do some noise reduction. Let me try to amplify this. Let me try to slow the tempo, and those are all, good things to try. But you don't want to edit it too much to where the voice becomes something else that is not. So, I mean, that would be one thing I would say, just too much, voice editing. And yeah.
Good advice. I agree with all that you said. Moving right along, let's see what Jim has to say in response to this question.
I was so busy thinking about what Heather was saying, I forgot the question.
Okay, well, basically what I asked was, what's the largest issue that you see or observe in the paranormal field when it comes to EVP that people are doing wrong? What's the issue? What's the biggest problem that you see?
Single most?
Yes.
TV shows.
Elaborate.
If you take the word paranormal and you take the word entertainment and make a portmanteau out of them, it becomes paratainment. Now, I'm assuming that those on the panel don't subscribe to everything they see on the myriad of shows that are out there. The sad part of that is the vast majority, like our conversation about the DR70 or DR60, the Panasonic. If they see it on TV, it's right. If they see it on TV, that's where everybody gets their training. Heather's mentioned research several times. The idea of the average ghost enthusiast, hunter, investigator, researcher is, I watched 32 episodes of the guy with all the moose in his hair, and that makes me an expert. And one of the first questions I ask people is, what's the last book you read that's related to the paranormal? And they go, what? People aren't thinking beyond what they've seen on television, which is fine. I mean, if they get 6 guys and a 6-pack and a flashlight and an audio recorder and go to a cemetery and have fun, I'm not one to say that's wrong. But when they start saying, I've got definite proof of a ghost, then I've got a problem.
Right.
You said keep the answers short, so that's my short answer.
No, I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you brought it up. We're going to talk about that more. Holly, do you have anything to add?
I do. I guess I would have to say the same as these guys. I've seen people do this. I've seen them put their stuff in editing program and drill down on little sections, and they will hear anything. I get it. Our brain, we hear things differently. And that's cool. That's the awesome thing about being humans is we're different. But, a lot of people will tell you not to, if you do put an EVP out there, not to tell someone what it's saying. I get that. I've been in many positions where I've had to let people down really nicely and say, I don't hear it. I don't know what you're talking about, because people can make words out of anything. And just like the way that people can in matrixing, where they can look at the wall and make a face out of anything. So it's easy. But when people are really yearning to hear it, they're going to hear it. So, research is a big deal. If trial and error, You know, that's cool if you're trial and error and you're not putting anything out there. You're like, holy shit, maybe that's not real. Maybe this, what I'm hearing is someone. You know, one thing as a paranormal investigator that I did, I took note of the sounds all around me, every little sound, the way someone's voices sound, you know, the way that they burped, you know, it was just, and you're constantly having to throw out this, that, or whatever. You know, so-and-so sneezed, I coughed, I hummed, because it's the littlest things that we forget in our minds that we do, maybe people have a click or something, you know, you just don't know, like a tick or something, and you forget about it. We forget about things so very quickly. So it's good to have that. Another thing that I found, especially with audio, have video on the audio at the same time and cross video with the audio. That way you can have that to compare. That's something that Josh and us done very, very often. That way you could have some validity to it to show, hey, you know, there's nobody here or there's someone there. Could it have been them?
Right. Common sense, right?
Right. Yeah.
So to add to these fine people on the panel, we got the pulp culture, okay? There's no hiding that people are obsessed with TV, with movie stars, with people who are famous, what's popular. It's a major part of our culture. So to understand the influence of those things and how it can impact our paranormal research in a negative, dysfunctional, and damaging way is probably the worst issue out there. Now, coupled with that is confirmation bias. Okay, what that means in short is you go to a haunted house, you go there, you pay money, you want to see a ghost, you want to hear a ghost, you turn on the recorder, you turn on the video camera, and you're going to find anything that you can't immediately explain and say, I caught a ghost. So you're not doing the field justice, in my opinion, because what we need to do, and I say this all the time, if you have not watched any of my vlogs or videos, we're trying to find out what's not paranormal. We don't know if spirits exist. Scientifically is not proven. So we can't say that they do exist scientifically. So if you go take a list of all the possible explanations of, you know, what could cause this, could this be, and you just mark off each one, slowly but surely you'll get down to a small, maybe even one thing that will say, okay, we don't know what this is. We could say it's anomalous. We can say it's quotation marks paranormal. If you're not going through that process, I don't think that you're doing what what we need to do as a community to get down to the bottom of it. If you're just confirming your own biases, that's great, that's fine, but you're not actually doing anything like truth seeking or proper research. It's just not it. So, moving right along, let's go back to Facebook. Missy, I'm sorry, I'm doing my best here. Any questions from Facebook that are good? Like if you got a lot, just pick out a good one.
I have a few. Zach Taylor asked, he said, why are EVPs or why do EVPs come out in an American English language? In most of these locations that are investigated are much older and the occupants did not speak that way, the way they do today. However, most EVPs sound like 21st century lingo. In most locations, they would have a Native American presence, Spanish, or a proper European accent. Thoughts?
Let's go to Heather.
That's a great question. One that I've often wondered myself. In all of the, voices, we'll say, that I've captured, audio, video, they're all speaking English. There have been voices where they're saying something and maybe it's just not loud enough for me to hear, ones that I'm not understanding. I've often kind of wondered, well, maybe, I don't know, are they talking in a different language? But like the example I gave with the EVP or disembodied voice, I don't like that. It sounded like very proper English accent. We've had our team has had a couple of things come through the spirit box in different accents, and the spirit box is kind of a whole different animal. But they had one where one of our investigators was in the birthplace of Andrew Johnson and asked the question, were you ever alive? And there was a voice that came through the spirit box that said, yeah, I was alive, kind of with an attitude and kind of a Southern type drawl to it. And then on that same property, this is at Mordecai Historic Park, in the main house, one of our other investigators was in there with the spirit box and said, do you want me to leave the room? Very specific. And a response came through, again, in like a proper English, leave the room, like that. So I would say we've caught things with accents, but always in the English language. And there is actually a location that we're going to investigate that, like many locations has, years ago, obviously, had Native Americans. And so one of the things I'd like to do is try, I've researched the tribes that are there, try to, get some words and phrases that maybe we can try to, communicate, just to experiment. But
awesome. So I think it would be interesting to, like, if you got something that you can't understand, maybe use something like Google Translate.
Yeah.
Or, like you said, just peer review some of the stuff in communities that might speak Native American languages, or like if you know that there's immigrants, or if you're in a country that does not speak English, obviously you would have them. Okay, Jim, what's your answer to why does everybody say dude and bro on your voice recorder? Just a joke.
I think to pick on the guys from Atlanta who use real questions. If I were born in the 1860s, I wouldn't understand a word they said. But if what they said came back as an EVP, we'd understand it immediately. And I don't know if there's a word for it, but I think the bias that, because we speak English, some of us do, that's what we hear. What I would really like to do is get like 9 people with completely different languages to sit in on an EVP session and, do the whole blind study kind of thing where I'm not going to tell you what it says. Write down what you think you hear at any point in this tape. I don't know that anybody's ever done that. I think that'd be interesting. I know when GHI used to go to their, over in Europe, occasionally they'd bring someone in that spoke the local language. Generally speaking, though, they were getting English responses. So let's put a Yugoslav guy in Yugoslavia and let him listen to EVP, or a Brazilian listening in Portuguese, to see what they get. I think they get it in, respectively, the European languages or the South American languages. I think it's a mistake, and it's a bias because of the investigator.
Right. I've often wondered myself that if it's something that's not clear, pareidolia will, kick in, and you will just make it something that sounds similar to whatever your imagination will, come close to. And I'm so guilty of this. Everyone is so guilty of that, because you're trying to make sense of what it is, and the way the brain works is you're going to fill in the blanks and you're going to improvise what you hear. So I like what you said about getting other people that speak other languages to see what they hear, because they may hear something totally different in their language. So that is definitely useful. I think that's a really good idea. Holly, why does everyone hear 21st century English? What's your explanation?
I don't know who does. I mean, I've heard Native American chanting. I'm from the Appalachian Mountains, and I've done a lot of investigations here. I've heard a poor form where the UVA-wise college is currently. We investigated the college, and we actually got a woman with the English accent. I've gotten people that I couldn't even understand, and I'm like, well, we'll just put that in the back. I don't even know, because I don't speak anything else but Appalachian English, so I'm screwed.
Right, and I think the guy that asked the question is, I don't know if he watches a lot of TV shows and he watches a lot of YouTube videos. Most of all the shows and the videos he's watching are probably English-speaking people. So
Yeah.
that might be a reason
No,
too.
I get what he's saying because I know I see it, and I've seen it on TV before. You know, if you're in England, why are you hearing this different? Like, okay, it's like being in England and hearing an Appalachian English accent. Why not though? This goes into my theory. I definitely want to get to this theory. I don't think it's the right time, but I think I know, Justin. You'll feel me on this one.
All right, I don't disagree. Is there any other questions on Facebook, Missy, that sounds good to address right now?
Zach Taylor also asked, for those that are skeptics, is there a scientific reason of how an EVP can change? Example, the guest you had on last week who had the EVP change to say, did you check the camera? I think that's what it changed to.
Mm-hmm. Oh, a theory on how that is done or how that's possible?
Or how that's possible, yeah.
Okay, so for the
Or
panel,
a scientific reason.
okay, for the people in the panel that did not listen to Patty Starr's interview, we're going to recap. Patty Starr was asked what her best EVP she ever captured was. Well, she captured a little girl's voice. And when she took it back to a class that she was giving on EVP, she loaded up onto her computer, and then it said there was a problem with the file, and it would not play. And when she played it, she finally got to play it. She heard something completely different, and the voice said, "Did you check your camera?" So she went to the camera, played it through the camera, and heard the original EVP through the camera audio. And what the guest is asking is, what is a scientific possibility or explanation for how that happens? Heather, have you experienced this? And if not, speculate.
All right, let me speculate. I have not had this happen. I've not heard of it happening. I did watch the interview though. Great interview with Patty. I guess for me, I would just have so many questions like, okay, she played it back and it changed. Well, I mean, I would have to know more about what was happening with this file. I mean, was it ever put onto her computer where it could have somehow been modified accidentally, or even on the recorder, did something happen and record was hit and there was another, I don't know. I guess my thing would be, was it manipulated accidentally somehow? But I mean, given the response that she got, did you check the video? I mean, it's definitely interesting. I don't know. I just, I've got nothing.
It's not an easy question. Jim, have you ever had a piece of audio say something completely different after listening to it the first time, bring it home, and it's saying something totally different? If so, what is your theory on why that happened?
The answer to the first part, never happened to me. Answer to the second part, I don't think it's scientific. I think it would be psychological. I record something on the 1st of November, and my brain is in a certain context. And then 6 weeks later, when I'm doing Patty's class, I'm in a whole different mental framework. And I listen to what I think I heard, and I go, wait a minute, that's not what that says. And like you mentioned before, our brain has this amazing capability to both translate, pattern match, and try to come up with something that explains it. But if we're in a different state sometime down the line, then we might hear something different. So I would submit that it's probably not the EVP didn't change, the interpretation of the EVP changed.
Very good answer. That's probably the most probable and likely explanation for it. Maybe. Holly, anything to add?
Sure. No, I agree with him. Absolutely, because I've done it. We've all done it. But however, I can tell you this: I have listened to hours and hours of audio. I would be sitting there and I would hear an EVP. I would hear this audio or this voice, and I'm looking on here and I'm like, holy shit, I've got to show everybody this. Like, this is amazing. And I clip it out and I take it to go send over, and there's nothing there. Because you have to look at it from my point of view as someone as a psychic. How many times do you think that a spirit has reached out through that? Because do you know how many times that I've been on a headset after doing podcast shows, no music or anything going, and I've been communicated with through that way? So you got to think of it that way. I know a lot of people are skeptical of that, but when your mind is preoccupied or when your mind is settled, when you have nothing around you but, silence, then, you can tune in more. I've been there. I've done it. When I first started awakening, when I first started hearing voices, I thought I was going crazy, and I would do everything that I could to try to debunk it.
Right. Yeah. Very good point. I think Joe Vitale is on YouTube, and he made an interesting point. I think but playing the file to the original recorder source, we play it. I think what he's insinuating is that maybe when she played the file, the video or the audio file the first time, it was through a different speaker on a different device, and during her class, she played it through a different device with different speakers, and that might be an explanation for why it sounded differently. And I thought that was interesting. But to kind of add and put my 2 cents on this, I do agree with everything the panel said. Plus, our memories are horrible. Okay, even to the following day, we may perceive something completely different than we did the day before. So you definitely want to to answer the question, psychological things and memory flaws and just human error is probably the explanation for this. But if not, if something intelligent, an entity, whatever you want to call it, a ghost, can imprint or create an EVP, they can change it. Okay? How they do that, we have no idea. We seldom have the education, the skill, know-how, and proper setups and equipment to test such things. And I can count maybe 1 or 2 people on my hand that have the technical know-how and the capability and resources to do that stuff. So I hope that answers the question. Anything else on Facebook before we go to YouTube, Missy?
Yeah, I have one more. West Storms asked, does the panel consider paranormal investigation a controlled environment? And if not, does that negate all or some of the EVPs captured during the investigation?
No. Next question. I'm just joking. Heather.
No, and no. So it's tricky because we try to control the environment, like I said earlier, as much as possible. And it's unfortunate when you have things like noise contamination. Anything you find, we tend to kind of just throw out. We have a saying, when in doubt, throw it out. We read a location recently where, unfortunately, there was just a lot of data contamination. I mean, we could hear voices, from outside the building, just loud and clear. And as I was, I made an effort to review anyway, and I found what I thought was, some sort of anomalous voice, but unfortunately, just because of all the contamination, we can't be for sure. So, I mean, I don't want to just be black and white and say, well, you definitely need to throw it out. I mean, it's just kind of what we do if we're not strongly for sure. And then kind of the opposite, when you do try to control your environment, you've got a pretty good controlled environment. I mean, you still have to be skeptical, even when you catch those voices, and do your due diligence and, try to rule it out first.
So, to sum that up is if you can't control your environment, is it something that's valid? Is something that can hold up to like some type of scientific peer review? Is it going to be torn apart pretty much if you have
Yeah.
Okay.
In my experience, yeah, it's going to be, oh, that sounds good, but there was so much contamination. It could have been somebody outside. It's just not really going to be believable to anybody.
Well, we can only speak for ourselves, right?
Yeah, but it's always different. I mean, it's always different when you're the one that experienced it, though, and that's just with anything in the paranormal field. You can have all the scientific data and video, audio, all that good stuff, but sometimes just the experience is just you can't put it into words and really properly convey it.
All right. Awesome. Jim, what say you?
No, no, and no.
You stole my answer.
You absolutely cannot control all the variables. You can ask the people to be quiet. You can turn off machines. You can turn off the lights. But the bottom line is there's stuff that you don't even know exists that's impacting the environment you're in. The best you can do, in my opinion, is to document it. Temperature, humidity, sunspots, anything that can change the environment, that could potentially change the equipment you're using. Try to document it. So if you get 3 good EVPs and the whatever level is low, and then you get 2 EVPs and something's just gone nuts, you might want to dismiss the 4th and 5th EVP. But if you can document it, over time, you can start getting a feel of when I'm in this kind of area, this kind of is the kind of thing that's happening. That's my 2 cents.
Right. Yes, very, very good points. I like that. Holly, what say you?
Yeah, I'm a hearer. No, you can't control it. We can't control anything, really, honestly. We're just a bunch of people who are hoping to hear from the other side. We go in these locations, and hope that we can connect. That we want to know that there's more out there, but how much of that is bringing in the spiritual aspect of who we are? So that's what I had to say about that. Because, I mean, as scientific evidence goes, I honestly could care less, because I know what I know and I feel what I feel. And, I've gotten to that point. At one point, though, I was a hungry investigator. I wanted to know more because it led me on my path that I'm on now. But you can't control it. It happens. I watch these poor guys that we work with, and I'm like, I'm so glad I don't have to do that shit anymore. I love them, but I'm like, go on, guys, get it.
Oh boy, yeah. No one likes sitting there staring at a screen or listening to a whole bunch of room noise.
No.
All right. Well, I agree with what Holly, Jim, and Heather has said, and I'll add to it. You can't control it, right? But there's things you can do. Now, kind of add to what Holly says, there is 2 truths. Inner truths and outer truths. The outer truth is objective. It's truth that science tries to deliver for people. It's true whether you believe it or not. Inner truths are true to them. And both are important because, we are humans. The way our brain functions, it doesn't just function on outer truths. It functions on inner truths, and it's wired like that. So both are important. But to control the environment is impossible the way we're doing it. You would have to set up a lab, get a whole bunch of money, go to school, get an education on sound engineering, and experiment a lot and control the environment. Now, if you can get your lab haunted, or you can turn a haunted location into a lab, we can talk. But there's a couple things we can do. Now, with the RVPR setup, cross-checking something with another, seeing if there's audio on one and not the other. If you can prove that it's physically impossible that you caught something on one microphone and not the other on the same recording device, or on 2 separate recording devices, then you can have a train going by and it doesn't matter. You can have a room full of people talking, which would be probably not a good analogy, but you can have some contamination or lack of control, but still be able to validate an anomalous, voice or something if you have some kind of setup like that. So please, we'll talk about or take any questions about those setups at the end of the show if you're interested. So we'll get into that. YouTube, I'm sorry. Our chat moderator had to go. There's a family emergency, but Scotty did ask a question. And if other people ask questions, I'm sorry. But I think he asked, does attaching a microphone to your recording device enhance or improve your ability to capture EVPs? And I thought that was an interesting question that we'll go ahead and answer. Heather, what do you think? What do you do? What do you think about that question?
I've heard that it does, and I can't give any really good examples. I've not done that. One of our investigators recently took an SJ cam, so this is video, but he actually removed the internal mic and attached an external one to it. So we're going to try that out. I've heard of investigators doing that and saying that it certainly does help. I've just not done that. But I mean, I've found just with my audio recorders, even without attaching a separate mic, I've still been able to catch anomalous things, we'll say. I can't say for sure if I attached a separate mic, if it would be even better, I would catch more things. But I have heard, though, of people doing that. And it's always good to experiment. I mean, it would be good to try. Maybe take two of the same exact audio recorders, same model, same settings, and then attach an external mic and then leave the other one alone and kind of see what happens, I think.
That's an awesome answer. You're awesome.
Well, thanks.
Jim, anything to add to, or how would you answer that question?
I think it's absolutely possible to get better input with an external mic, because the chances are the external mic is better than the internal mic. However, you can get a $50 recorder and an $8 mic and you haven't improved much. You have to get a decent mic. The second part of that is, given the working theory that EVP is a result of EMF, you just added an antenna that's 2 to 6 feet long. It's something I wasn't supposed to hit. I've got a mic like yours, but I've got it up out of the way so it doesn't show.
Right.
It's a you get what you pay for kind of thing. And I've done it. I've got a little box full of microphones that I've tried for the 1/8-inch small recorders. I bought adapters to try to put good mics on marginal recorders. I've never done a 1-against-1 an A/B test like Heather was talking about.
Right on. Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about. I want to leave a little bit of time for you to talk about the RVPR more in depth and maybe come up with some, conclusions from all your research, because I know you've been using it for a while. Holly, anything to add to this real quick?
Sure. I mean, I've watched Josh use one, and it would pick up everything like a pin drop from 500 rooms away. And I'm like, my God, don't ever get close to that and speak to somebody, because it's awful. But no, and nothing else to really say about that, because I don't really do all that. So, yeah.
So pretty much to sum it up, if your mic is not good and the external mic you have is better than the internal mic, then yes, Scotty. The answer is yes. So, all right, guys, I want to leave this last half hour of the show to kind of let the panel, submit or, talk about something, that means something to them in their paranormal research when it comes to EVP. I want to kind of give them an open floor, because I know Holly wants to talk about something. I'm sure, and I want to hear what Jim thinks about the RVPR and what he's been able to conclude over his years of research. And I'm also interested to hear what Heather's journey's been. So Heather, why don't we talk about your journey from the start to finish, what have you learned about your EVP research? What have you refined? What is the conclusion to this present time when it comes to EVP?
Yeah, that's a great question because, like I mentioned earlier, at the beginning, just any little voice I heard, oh, I caught an EVP, and it wasn't until doing more research, talking to other people in the field, did I really, realize, oh, wow, I need to put way more thought into this. And Justin, we talked about this a little bit recently too. Something I have learned, EVP versus disembodied voice. And that is, EVP being a manipulation of the electronic to, create that voice or that communication. Whereas disembodied voice is actually using sound waves. As I'm talking right now, my vocal cords are vibrating. It's, bouncing the molecules in the air, sound waves, all of that good stuff. And which raises the question, well, spirits don't have vocal cords. So how is it that, they're able to imprint their voice on these devices? And that's why I mentioned using multiple audio recorders, because if I catch the voice just on one and not the other, well, is it an EVP then? Because if it was using sound waves or whatever, then shouldn't it have been caught on both? And then the example I gave of my favorite EVP, where we caught it on multiple devices, even the one that I had outside the room where it sounded a little bit more distant, that sounds like it should have been a disembodied voice. And so that's kind of been a real eye-opener for me, I guess, because now that, and then just viewing the files as spectrograms, trying to kind of do the best that I can in analyzing that. Again, not the expert on that. I'm learning. And that's just really been the eye-opener for me, and just something I do from now on. I mean, anything I catch, it's, I'm trying to, was it an EVP? Was it a disembodied voice? This and that. So that's really been kind of an eye-opener for me, kind of where I'm at right now is in analyzing that.
So it's fair to say that the amount or frequencies that you catch these voices have dwindled and diminished considerably from the beginning, and maybe EVP's much more rare than a lot of people may realize.
Yeah, because it's like, I'm even going back to old ones. I'm like, oh, let me re-look at this with fresh eyes all over again, and look at this spectrogram and try to see. And what I am finding is these were caught on multiple devices. And then when you look at spectrograms and you look at the frequencies, they're in the same frequency as human voices talking. I mean, but not always. I mean, there was one where parts of it were in the same frequency, but then it kind of goes below the range of human hearing, and but I don't know what to make of that at this point. I would need to research it further.
Yeah, right. That's a whole nother show and a whole nother college course.
Yeah.
All right. Is that all?
Yes. Did I get everything?
Well, I wanted to give you at least a few minutes to kind of, sum up your research.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yeah, so there's that. And then, the other thing too, when I first started investigating, it was a very old school style audio, video, which I still to this day firmly believe. I mean, those are the foundations of investigating is audio and video. I mean, you have all of those other gadgets and out there that light up and make noises, and I think they're great to experiment with. I mean, absolutely, we use them, we experiment with them. It doesn't mean we 100% believe that they're definitely indicating their spirits or whatever, but I think this field is all about experimenting, but also keeping those foundations of, always have your audio and your video and your traditional methods. But I'm really right now enjoying experimenting with, some of those gadgets out there, just to see what data is. It's all about data, all about gathering data. Something else I've been doing this year is keeping a spreadsheet of all the different locations, the temperature outside, the temperature inside, all kinds of different things. This spreadsheet has, I don't even know how many columns, but my hope is by jotting down that data that, and my team, we try to do that, and can we see trends? Can we recreate things. We're very fortunate. We're the official paranormal team for the City of Raleigh Parks and Recreation for Mordecai Historic Park and Theater in the Park. So those two locations, we're very fortunate. We get to revisit over and over. So, Mordecai Historic Park, we go there about 3 to 4 times a year. And then in October, we give a presentation to the public on our findings. And so what's awesome about that is that we get to go back over and over again and try to, if we caught something, let's try to recreate it, put our equipment in the same place or, whatnot. And so that is really helping our research, I think.
Yeah, I would say it would have to. And it's all about the research. Like you said, you're trying to explore and research. It's interesting, I like that you have a spreadsheet and you log everything and keep it organized like that. Do you allow other teams to access that data if they asked?
Nobody has asked, but I would definitely love to. And I'll tell you this too, and forgive me because I don't remember their name. They're in Georgia. They're a paranormal team. The Paranormal Data Collective, I think it's called. They're actually doing this where they have, I haven't, participated in it or anything. I've started looking at it, but they actually do this. They collect data and allow other teams to input their data and you share it, which I think is amazing. So I would love to share. I mean, I wouldn't mind. I mean, we can't further this field unless we're all working together and we're all sharing data. And, if somebody else has a spreadsheet and I may learn something from it and, hey, that's interesting. Let's compare notes, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I said it first. All right.
Yeah.
We'll move on to Jim. RVPR, I'm really interested in knowing if you have got anything that you could validate as an anomalous device with that setup. Maybe kind of explain the RVPR a little bit more than you did initially, and let's see what the conclusions are after X amount of years using it.
I'm not real familiar with Google Hangouts, but can you put an image of the RVPR up?
Sure.
That would really help, I think, for the people that are not sure what we're talking about.
Let me do it real quick. Dun, 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 dun. Go ahead. You can go ahead and start talking while I'm doing this, so there's no dead air.
Okay. I think what my research has evolved to is trying to locate potential audio sources that are not EVP. I think Heather mentioned picking up things way at the other end of the building. We went to Poatstown in Ohio, which I'm sure you're familiar with, since that's your area.
Oh, yeah.
And this was a group I'd not worked with a lot, and they came down and I said, put the headsets on, you get an idea of what I'm doing. And they said, God, you can hear everything. I said, yeah, that's the point. I think a lot of what we collectively hear and ascribe to EVP is a train going by 2 miles away. The RVPR is so sensitive that when a car drives by 2 blocks away, you can tell if it's a V6 or a V8.
Right.
If it's audio, people are going to, not people, the RVPR is going to pick it up.
Yeah, that's right.
That gets us up to the point of, is it acoustic energy? Is it EMF? And that's something I'm still working with. You and I have talked about the putting a MagCheck 95 on one channel and the dynamic mic on the other and comparing the two of those and see what we get.
Right, because the hypothesis is, does magnetic fields, are they the cause or the culprit to the EVP? And that's definitely a better way. The Roundtree started off with the dynamic mics, and what I discovered was newer dynamic mics that are used for vocals have interference coils in them. They're very similar to noise cancellation in headphones, if you're familiar with that technology. And what that does is if there's any interference, impacting the microphone, it's going to cancel it out. So that's not what you want in your microphone. So that's why I use the shotgun mics that are just, they pick up all the freaking noise on the planet.
Right.
That's what you want. So the MagCheck 95 is $150. You can go to Digital Dowsing and get the EVP mic. I forget how much that is. Derek can probably jot down what he paid for it or somebody else. And we use that because it's much more easier to kit and it's cheaper. And you can just use an adapter and plug it in. So nothing that you've been able to not explain using the setup thus far?
And it's funny. People say, well, did you catch anything at blank, wherever I've been? I'm like, no, I won't say that's not what I go for. I go to try to understand what people are getting that they think is an EVP. I can't afford that Panasonic we were joking about.
Right.
To go from the ridiculous to the sublime. And the DR, the Tascam or the Zoom is probably the best that people at our level can get. I mean, there's lots of studio quality portable recorders if we had unlimited budgets, but we don't.
Right. Yeah, and quickly go over the components. We're looking at a photo of my setup. Jim's is the same thing, but he's using a Tascam DR40, which is pretty much like the Zoom H4n, and he's using dynamic mics, I think, currently. But you can use dynamic mics. I'm using shotgun rather. He's using dynamics. You want to experiment with different mics, but if you're testing the electromagnetic field hypothesis, then you want to get mics that don't cancel those out. So make sure that you get those. So just pretty much how this works is we want to isolate audio, the EVP, on one or two of the microphones that are external, like either the dynamic or the shotgun, and the ones in the middle here that are internal on the recording device, that's where you don't want to see it. That is actually physically impossible. So if that happens, that is improving EVP research by validating that something paranormal, which is outside the explanation of what's physically possible according to science. That's why we're using that, and we advocate the use of that. Using a 20-year-old 6-bit sample rate recorder that sounds like garbage is not what you want to do, in our opinion. And I'm hoping the panel agrees, but at any time the panel can speak up if they think otherwise. So there you have it.
The difference between Justin's setup and my setup is, again, I'm using dynamics instead of the shotguns. He's got his two microphones shock mounted, which I've got those shock mounts for when I need it, but generally speaking, mine sits on a table. I don't have a handle on the bottom. I have the standard desk mic, big cast iron, heavily weighted stand. It sits on a table. I'm old. I carry a table so I don't have to hang on to it. I carry one of those sports chairs so I can sit down. But it doesn't move. It's absolutely stationary. Again, back to our discussion about variables, to get rid of those variables.
Right. Yeah.
You can also run the output of the Tascam into a Audacity or something on a laptop and watch the waveforms and compare what the internal condenser mics are doing. And condenser mics are blind to EMF. So if the theory holds that EMF is the source of EVP, then only, in my case, the dynamic mics, in his case, the shotgun mics, will pick it up, and the trace for the condenser mics won't pick anything up.
Right, but I do know that the internal condenser stereo mics to these recorders aren't absolutely deaf to EMF, but they there's two things. They're better shielded, and the diaphragms are designed, the two electric plates for the capacitance are designed in a way that differs from like say a dynamic mic. This can get really techie, but you can have a strong field still make a little bit of noise. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
I'm so used to isolating anything that would get in there that I've not noticed that.
You probably won't. You would have to like put like a cell phone right up against the mics, or turn on a blender or a microwave right next to it. You would have to really subject it to something severe.
Right.
All right, awesome. So we're standing by. I have not yet done it either, so I'm still waiting for somebody to do it. So we're going to have to wait a little bit longer.
Right.
We'll move over to Holly. She has something she would like to share with us before we wrap up this show, and I can't wait to hear it. What's your theory? What are we talking about?
So when y'all are talking, it's very intriguing, but it's like y'all are speaking another language. But I do appreciate your scientific views, though. That's pretty cool. This is like Josh sitting here talking to me about stuff and me looking at him like a dumb blonde. You know, no, it's cool though. No, I do have my own views. And you know what? It was my path into the paranormal of scientific that led me to my path of spirituality, which gave me the views of how I feel about not just the paranormal field interacting with these entities, but also EVPs and video footage, things that we see. You know what? The idea of us capturing a entity, I will call it an entity, a spirit on an equipment is probably not that often as people would like to think it is. Just like the video footage. It'd be nice. It would be nice because I will tell you, as a psychic, as many times as I've heard things, and people look at you, say you're in a group where you are the psychic and everybody else is the investigator, and they're like, I don't have the sixth sense. In reality, we all have the sixth sense. We're spiritual beings in a vessel, right? So we all have that innate ability to tune in, whether it be through smell, hearing things. How many times have you heard something but you never captured it on audio? Why is that? Is that because we are on a physical plane and the things that we are interacting with are not on that same plane? So there's no way that we could go to that frequency without this huge scientific breakthrough of, well, let's travel to this plane. Okay, so yeah, I probably sound a little whack job right now, but that's okay, because when we talk about out-of-body experiences, or you're traveling astral projection, things like that, things that I've done, I've seen, and been amazed by, things that Spirit has shown me, it makes perfect sense why we are so unable to even touch the possibility of being able to sit here and have a conversation and hear it one-on-one on the physical level, the physical plane, because we can't comprehend that. It's like, I don't know. There's just so much to it. It's like we're dumb. I mean, when we look at the spiritual overview of what we're doing, it's almost like if we was to put a video on what we're doing, and we knew all this knowledge, we would be laughing at ourselves because we're going at it on a total, I'm not going to say it's a wrong way, because nobody has the right or wrong way, but spiritually, to connect, you got to understand that we are dealing with things on different levels of existence. And if we really stood back and worked with the science aspect and the spiritual aspects of what we're dealing with, then maybe we could create something that people will be like, holy shit. So the paranormal field is not just about research, but building. So get out there and get your spiritual people and your scientific people together, and let's start creating instead of just sitting and doing the same repetitive shit all over again. Because I appreciate people who are on this path because I was on that path. That's why I'm here today. But I mean, look at the planes of existence. If you don't know about the planes of existence, you should really probably do some research and learn more about it, because it would make sense to you. As someone who works with the spiritual aspect of things, and the things that I've been through, the things that I've seen, and guys, I'm coming from a place where I was a normal person. I didn't see dead people as a kid. I started having these wild experiences where I thought, hell, I didn't know what I thought. But through my own research within myself, and, it really showed me my path. But I don't know, there's a lot of learning to do. But working together is key. It's vital.
Yes, I understand where you're coming from, and I think about this all the time, and I think the majority of people who use the recording devices, the equipment, believe that they're extensions of our senses, but they're not exactly synonymous. There's differences between how the ear works and how a transducer works on a recording device. There's differences in how a video camera lens and sensor works compared to our eyes. But with that being said, there are things I believe that we see metaphysically compared to how we see it optically. And what I mean by that is we see it with a different type of sight. And I've been researching these things, and the things that I've seen with my actual optics of my eyes don't correspond with things that I've seen psychically. And an example of that would be most things you see optically are shadow people, anomalies, weird, formations of energies, weird crap. Things that you can see psychically is a full-blown clothed apparition. We do not capture that. We capture weird shadow anomaly stuff on video cameras because that's optical. Same thing goes with audible. We can hear things psychically, but not hear it on the recorder. There's the different mechanic to EVP and how we think it is captured. So I think you do have a valid point, but what most people are trying to do is just extend their senses a little bit more and trying to figure out if this phenomena if there's something to it. And I do agree with you. We need to work on working together instead of trying to, make things crappy and make it a game and make it a competition and close your mind off of what people think and hear. That's what I want to do with this show. I want, to get people with, as much diversity as I can to kind of see eye to eye. And if not, they can learn to respect each other and agree to disagree and still strengthen the community by not bickering and, seeing some type of disrespect for those in the field. So at the end of the day, if we can't agree, we can at least respect each other. And I think that is worth our time. So I'm hoping you guys think that too. What do you guys think? Anybody?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
All right. Well, we have a few minutes left. So Heather, why don't you go first? Why don't you tell us, or tell the viewers rather, how they can follow your work, the Ghost Guild. If you want to shout out some members of the Ghost Guild, go ahead, because I know they're probably watching. It's like, hey, when are they going to talk about me?
I know, because I keep saying, well, one of our investigators, and then one of our other investigators. I know. So yes, Nelson, Kelly, Jason, Dan. We've got extended members too. Chelsea. We have a really great team, really diverse. Everybody brings something to the table. Kelly sings. Jason, I call it role playing. So a lot of the times, he'll go in just himself, no equipment. He'll sit down at the dining room table and act like he's, having dinner and just kind of role playing, just seeing if he can get any kind of response. Each of us has our own little gizmos, we like to bring and experiment with. You can check us out. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/The Ghost Guild. You can also go to theghostguild.com. We do, private investigations with just us. We do open some of our investigations to the public. So definitely follow us. I know in April we'll be going back to the Battleship North Carolina, so I think we have some spots still available there. So, I mean, whether you're brand new to investigating or you're a seasoned investigator, I mean, we love collaborating, meeting new people. I mean, it's really, we love to learn, and this has been really great. I've actually learned a lot just in this 2 hours here. I've got my pen. I've been taking notes. So, so thank you, Justin and Holly and Jim, Jessica and Missy. This has been pretty awesome. So.
Well, yes, we're all going to group hug at the end of this.
Yeah, virtual hug.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for coming on. And I learned something all the time, whether be something small. If you're not learning, then you're doing it wrong, as far as I'm concerned. So I got the links in the description, guys, so there's no excuse to find out how to check out Heather's stuff. Jim, any plugs? Anything coming up? Anything you want the viewers to know before we sign off this evening?
I am not team-based. I am not website-based. I am not blog-based. So there's not a lot out there. You what?
You have a Facebook group, right?
There is a Facebook group. It's called Spirit Lab. And it's a bunch of really, really serious people that really try to look at the paranormal from a scientific standpoint. It's not one of those sites where you post fuzzy pictures or buzzing EVP. It's more about methodology and like, how can we talk about EVP without talking about what's making the EVP? And how can we use the word spirit if it doesn't exist? I mean, we haven't proven that. Holly and her skills aside, from a scientific standpoint, we don't know what they are. We don't even know if we survive death. So there's a lot of assumptions that we build into everything we do. And if you're not absolutely studying all the time, which doesn't mean watching TV shows, I've got, I think, about 75 books on the paranormal. And no, I haven't read them all, but I read pieces of them that I need when I'm working on something. So my closing would be study. Don't just look at TV. Think. Use some of those classes you took in high school or college that you never thought you'd use. And just keep cranking and share. I think everybody's in agreement on that.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. If you're going to think critically. Awesome, Jim. It's been awesome to have you on the show. It's been super cool to see you there in front of me, and we get to have a conversation that's not through Messenger. And it's just been a pleasure talking to you in this format. I really am appreciative that you're here.
Face-to-face rocks, man.
It does. I love it. Holly, plugging McPluggerson time.
Sure. Part of the Southern Gypsies. We are all traveling psychics. We are witchy women. We actually, speaking of TV shows, no, I'm playing. We actually just signed with a production company, so we are working on a show ourselves. But I promise to bring the truth to you, okay, people? Now, but something I do want to say, because I know somebody has their books, people have their different ways of researching, but how about this? Let me challenge you guys. How about looking within yourself for answers as well? Because there's a reason that we're here. There's a reason why you're watching. There's a reason for everything. There's no such thing as coincidences, because we have a yearning to know. So how about this? If you want to know if spirit exists, if you want to know if it's real, how about looking within yourself to understand the universe from within? Because not everything's physical, people. It's spiritual too. Pow pow. Y'all can follow us on Instagram, Facebook. Just hit me up.
Yes, we have Holly's links in the description of the video as well. Thank you, Holly. We've been having you on the show quite a bit to fill in, to help Justin out, and to be on this great panel and on the show that I'm trying to create. And Make awesome. So I appreciate it.
You're awesome, Justin. And I just think you're a great all around person. And yeah, I couldn't think of, if you was anybody else, I'd say, fuck no, I couldn't come on.
Anybody, you wouldn't do it for anyone else.
Well, maybe Bender, okay, because I love him.
All right. I'm going to accept that. He's a pretty okay guy.
He is.
All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this show up. If you want to, you can hang out on the video call while I do that. If you got to go, you got to go. But stand by while I close this sucker out. It's been freaking awesome to have this panel on tonight. There's so much we can learn from, listening to each diverse viewpoint on topics that we all are curious and wonder about. We're trying to figure out if EVP is legitimate. Is it spirits? Is it ghosts? Is it aliens? What is it? We don't know. We're trying to develop methods to legitimize and validate what we think it is, but we need to learn, as we discussed. We need to use proper equipment, the best equipment we can afford, and please take a look at some of the stuff that we're learning from paranormal pop culture, and and hold a microscope to it, because there's some issues there, and understand what confirmation bias is, and understand the psychology of all the things we talked about. But I want to thank everyone that's watched this video tonight. It has been a pleasure in engaging with everybody on Live Paranormal on Facebook, and on our casuals and usuals on Interface Death's YouTube channel. It's been awesome doing this show, and if you guys know any skeptics, psychics, or investigators that would be great for the show, just email me at justinbrown@interfacedeath.net, or get a hold of me on Facebook. Just go to my website that's linked in the video description and get a hold of me, and maybe you yourself would be interested in coming on. So before we wrap this up, we're going to take a look at some of these links here. I definitely want you guys to go check out liveparanormal.com. There's lots of stuff that they're putting up that I hear. Check out our paranormal work at interfacedeath.net or .com. You can follow Live Paranormal on Facebook. We're going to talk about Patreon. If you want to financially support this show and all the paranormal work we do and get rewarded for it, and we'll talk about that in depth here in a second. You can follow Interface Death on Twitter and Instagram as well. All the people that you see on the screen right now make this content possible. Clay Borman, RJ Murphy, Danette Goldtrip, Scotty Fox, Jessica Pius, Bill Davis, Joe Vitale, and Sherry Brett. Thank you very much for your continued support. If you want to be shouted out on the shows, help me produce our video content, and be a part of the family, check out patreon.com/support Interface Death and learn how you can do that, and check out all the exclusive content and rewards that you can get from doing so. $1 a month, $5 a month. There's all kinds of different tiers. So please check that out. And there you have it. I'm going to leave it here. You guys have been great. Thanks to the guest again in the panel. You guys were freaking awesome. Stick around for some video promotions. At the end of the show, we always show some video promotions and some advertisements. So I'm going to leave it there. You guys have a good night. The next show for Supernatural Symposium will be January 7th. So follow Live Paranormal and all my stuff I mentioned to figure out what the topic's going to be, who's going to be on the show. Every Tuesday, so tomorrow night at 8 p.m. on Justin Brown Paranormal Research Facebook, we're going to do another show called Paranormal Soapbox. And on Wednesdays, we do an interview-based show, just with one person. So follow me, find out all the cool stuff we're doing. You guys have a good night. I bid you farewell.
again?
Are you in this room over here? What the fuck, dude? Whoa. That's weird.
You didn't do anything, right?
No, it just turned.
Justin too close?
No,
He opened that door and it went off.
Yep, exactly.
Did you just run out of there? What was that?
I don't know. I feel like I can't breathe in this room.
Generally, Justin, when you guys investigate, do you just take long pauses, wait to see if you hear things, observe everything that's going on?
It depends on the location and our experience with the location. So in this case, at Waverly Hills, since we've been here before, we've heard a lot of stories, done a lot of research, and investigated. We typically like to listen a lot because we hear the coughing, we heard it last time, so we didn't hear it again.
Side effects of prolonged isolation: paranoia, depression, helplessness, brain stimuli decreases. Now, what happens when you put a man isolated in 3 paranormal infested buildings for 3 nights in each location, all by himself? No one to help me. No one to protect me. Just me versus you. Does paranormal activity increase?
So what do you think of this piece of evidence? I think by far it's the best piece of evidence we have seen here.
That's flat out amazing. And that's something we've never captured.
Oh, wow.
What? Nobody has ever got it on video.
That's creepy.
In 11 years.
So no one's ever caught this on video?
Never.
Ever.
Here is my story, and here is what I went through for my research into the paranormal.
Viewpoints.